This is me on the day of my science exam in July 2018. Clearly, you can see that academics wasn't my real focus. Growing up as a child, all I could think of was how to have a good time, watch TV, play video games, and goof around with my friends. Academics was the last thing on my mind. Kind of ironic that I'm saying this in a school. For those who are familiar with the cartoons of Dennis the Menace, I was the Dennis of my community. Always up to pranks and antics to bother the neighborhood kids. In the evening, whenever the doorbell would ring, I would get worried, thinking that it was a child or a parent coming to complain about something that I did earlier in the day. This is me a few months later on a Sunday. This is not the result of some calming medication or a change in hormones or some serious disciplining by my parents. It was an event that happened in my life. It was a seemingly nondescript workshop that I attended. Just before the Diwali break, I heard about this workshop in my school. It aimed to get students higher grades in their exams. It was called How to Be a Topper. The only reason why I even considered attending this workshop was because my parents promised me that I would get a new Lego set if I got better grades in my exams. When I went home in the afternoon and told my parents about this workshop, they were shocked. Coming from a student that mostly gets B's and C's, while it may have seemed like a logical request, but such a request coming from their chilled out son was definitely surprising. I was able to persuade them to let me attend the first introductory session. The first introductory session was free. Free is always a good word with the parents. I don't remember much about the introductory session, but my parents told me that I came home quite animated and insisting on signing up for it. This was like music to their ears. It was easy convincing them not only to pay for the next 4 days, but also to ferry me back and forth. The first day of the workshop was a complete washout. I was as cynical as one could be, making fun of the techniques being taught, trying to be the wise guy in the class. Now, I don't remember much, but I remember that the next day, I somehow dragged myself back to the workshop, wondering what I had gotten myself into. But as the day passed during one of the breaks, the facilitator talked about a very personal story about himself. He talked about the struggles that he faced in life. He talked about how he was from a well-to-do family, had all the luxuries in life, but somewhere he fell out with life. He got addicted to smoking at a very young age, then to alcohol and then drugs. His girlfriend had left him. His parents sent him to rehab, but he relapsed. He then went into depression. He left his home and his parents and started living on the streets, eating leftovers and sometimes even begging for food. One day, a beggar offered to give him food. That was the moment he knew enough is enough. He had to take charge of his life. So he went back home to his parents and went to rehab and came out of his addiction and then addressed his depression. After a few years, he completed his education and went on to be an established life coach. So after hearing this story, I felt that that is the man that I want to be. When I went home, I narrated this story to my father. He was shocked that I was talking about such serious stuff like drugs, alcohol, suicide, depression, and the struggles that one faces in his life. The next day of the workshop, I was so excited to go back. I found everything the coach said interesting. I was listening to every single word he said. To the surprise of myself and my friends, I was actually participating in class, asking and answering questions. To make a long story short, I really enjoyed the workshop and got a lot out of it, and even got a personalized autograph from the coach. When I went to school, I started applying these techniques in my studies. Suddenly, it made studies easier for me. My mom no longer had to force me to learn and then repeat answers to questions. In the next exam, I did not get a single C, only B's and A's. My parents got a return on their investment. So, what exactly happened to me? Because I seemed to be a different person. almost like all the major neurons in my brain had gotten rewired. I was having mature conversations with my parents, talking to them of what career I wanted to pursue. So, was it hormones kicking into overdrive or a growth spurt, maybe? Well, I believe that the personal story of the facilitator really triggered something in me. It lit a spark, almost like it was a fictional story, but right there in flesh and blood. It just inspired me to visualize myself as a successful person. Needless to say, the techniques worked, and suddenly studies became easier and less painful for me. And it reinforced my belief in the new me. So, the big question is, what is inspiration? Well, literally, inspiration means breathing in. But for me, inspiration means breathing in or infusion of an idea or a purpose into the mind. For me, it means some sort of an impetus that propels us to transcend our perceived limitations and capabilities. It could lead us to do a small deed like helping a poor person or painting a picture. Or it could be as large as starting a revolution. Or, as in my case, finding my own calling. I'm sure all of us want to do well for society and ourselves, improve our lives. So, could we create some sort of a perfect environment that can inspire us? Could we maybe fill it with all the major components and artifacts that can inspire ourselves? Could we decide that this weekend I want to get inspired? Could we maybe check into an inspiration hotel for a 3-day, 2-night package? Well, as per studies by famous psychologists Thrash and Elliott, inspiration cannot be willed or planned. One cannot stage a situation to get inspired. It's just something that happens. There's no prescribed process or recipe that ensures inspiration. What I believe makes an object, an event, or an experience truly inspiring is based on its intrinsic value rather than its objective worth. And that intrinsic value is attributed by our personal beliefs, our personal values, and our subconscious. As they say, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, I say and believe that inspiration is in the mind of the observer. However, the chances of us being inspired are greatly enhanced by the openness of mind to new experiences. So clearly, the more we surround ourselves with such catalysts for inspiration, and the more prepared our mind is to be inspired, the more are the chances of us being inspired. So, do we really need world leaders and celebrities to inspire us? Does it have to be Mahatma Gandhi or Milkha Singh? Does it have to be a picture perfect sunset or a beautiful butterfly? Or can we be inspired by average events, ordinary people, or even a very regular discussion? Or can it be your newspaper boy, your neighbor, or an uncle that visits you occasionally? Take the example of this girl named Zui, who is in 10th grade. Zui was deeply influenced by the hardships faced by her uncle, who was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at the age of 42. Parkinson's disease is a neurological disorder that affects movement, often including tremors. It affected his ability to lead a normal life. The medication dosage prescribed to him definitely alleviated his pains, but it did not eliminate it. And this deeply pained Zui. She felt a burning need to help him. In her research, she learned that if data about the tremors in the body could be captured, it could assist medical professionals in dosage planning for the patients. However, there was no mechanism that existed that could capture this data. So, she decided to take matters in her own hands and build a device that could precisely capture this. She developed a glove, embedded sensors and hardware, and developed software, and leveraged a lot of modern day technology to make her device work. Her invention received widespread appreciation and won her multiple awards like the APJ Abdul Kalam Inspiring Minds Award and very recently the Pradhan Mantri Rashtriya Bal Puraskar. So clearly, Zui did not need an Albert Einstein or a Madame Curie or some Nobel laureate to evoke this passion in her. It was her own uncle that lived in her house. As I conclude, I would like to remind you all of the story of the legendary King Bruce and the spider. After being repeatedly defeated by the enemy, King Bruce was forced into hiding. And he took refuge in a cave. Sitting in that cave, he noticed a spider trying to weave her web. The spider needed to go from one beam to another. After trying over and over and failing multiple times, the spider was finally able to swing to the desired beam and build her web. King Bruce took inspiration from the spider. He saw himself reflected in the spider's struggle. So he collected his dispersed army and vanquished the enemy. So, my submission to all of you is that if you really want to get inspired, keep your mind open to positive stimulus and positivity, as inspiration is indeed omnipresent. Do not limit your sources of inspiration to world renowned and successful people. So, you'll be surprised where your next source of inspiration could be, where your inspirational spider could be hiding. Thank you so much.